Magdalena, a synth pop duo who released their debut album Mercurial World in 2021. Here are my thoughts. So synth pop, unsurprisingly, not something I listen to on the regular. There are possibly a handful of albums that I would listen to, like Debut, you could argue, or Invisible Touch. So at first I felt like I was getting the cold shoulder upon beginning the album, this first song, which is called The End, I think, which is something maybe I'm not too keen on, but nonetheless, yeah, I wasn't too sure at first, but I definitely warmed to it as the album continued. First thing I noticed was the presence of sort of baby-like vocals, maybe you could call them that. There are plenty of female vocalists I prefer to the singer of this album. Of course, that doesn't mean that their styles would fit on this synth pop production. And speaking of the production, it's very solid, very sharp. Although that's pretty much a cliche because any modern pop music pretty much has to be well produced in order for it to even be acceptable. And what does great production even mean? It's said a lot, but it's almost just a buzzword to throw in there for any album that sounds good. Oh, the production is great. Well, maybe my understanding isn't perfect, but for me, great production would be, well, of course it sounds good and it's mixed well, but it's these little embellishments in the mix and just creative choices that make the album exciting and stop it from being boring and flat and sterile. It's kind of hard to quantify what I mean by that. But as an example, I would say, if you want, listen to At War with the Mystics by the Flaming Lips. The production on that is great, even if you could argue the songs aren't as solid as they were on the previous two albums. I think there's something interesting going on at pretty much any point of the album. So although it's a different genre, it's a comparison I could make to something like this. Another production choice is the idea to staple the songs together without any silent gaps, and I think it's something I really liked about the album, actually. There are a handful of albums that do this. I guess one that comes to mind, completely different, Colours. It's basically just one song by Between the Buried and Me. Obviously not really going for the same thing. But without silent gaps, I feel like you get more of an aura of a long DJ mix or something like that. It's, yeah, something I like. I already said it. I don't know why I'm waffling on. Perhaps this album is not so symbolic of regular pop music, actually. I felt like the focus was less on catchiness and following traditional song structures, and it was more on textures and creating something that sounds great in lieu of trying to get on the charts, if you like. And even if the songs do have traditional verse-chorus structures, that wasn't what I was focusing on anyway. And as I was saying earlier, I really did warm to this album the further in I went. I think the turning point was this song called Cherry. Or maybe it's just called Cherry, but it has an A-E in it. We had these extreme reverberated passages. There was a very dramatic moment in the middle, and towards the end I was like, actually this is pretty good, whereas before I was sort of just getting behind the idea of listening to a synth pop album, I suppose. So everything past that I really enjoyed, and there's not a weak song on here. And I actually liked the fact that it wasn't an instant hit as soon as I started the first song, because gives me a reason to come back to see what I missed, you know what I mean? There are a lot of albums like that where there's so much going on that every time you listen to it you pick up something new. Pretty Hate Machine is a good example of that. Pretty much any Nine Inch Nails anyway, at least before the turn of the millennium. And after all, if an album plays all its cards on the first listen, a second listen isn't going to be as exciting, is it? At the end of the day, the album's just very fun to listen to, and I've left very happy that it has exceeded my expectations despite a rocky start. Alright, another album from this year that I really like we got 2021 again. The Solar Paroxysm album was also 2021, so I'm gonna have to pick another one. Actually, not as bad a year as I thought, with it being so close to now. You know, I feel like the further along we go, the fewer albums I have to pick, but it's not the case for this year. There are actually a few good ones. I'll go with something maybe a bit less known. Country Tropics by Old Saw. It's just an ambient album, so very different to this synth pop album I just listened to, but it's extremely pleasant, about 40 minutes. I'd recommend it if you just want to relax. That's about all there is to it. And the name of the game is Mercurial World, a one and done. No, I don't think so. It's an obvious grower, and it makes me excited to listen to it again to see, as I say, what I missed, especially in the first half of the album. So definitely not a one and done, which is high praise, possibly the highest praise so far. Alright, we got the bonus, The Great Escape by Seventh Wonder. Now this was the last pick of the first album club cycle, and unfortunately there were no takers at all, and that's not sat right with me. So I'm gonna go ahead and add this one in, and it's gonna be quick because there isn't too much to say. I'll just get straight to the point. This is not my kind of music at all. This sort of symphonic prog, drawn out Scandinavian metal, and obviously I wasn't such a big fan of this record either. So let me tell you why. When I think of this genre, symphonic prog or prog metal like this, I'm thinking bombastic, in-your-face production, but this felt very sterile and, in fact, not as virtuous as you would expect from the genre. Riffs and passages seemed to come and go as they pleased without much rhyme or reason. The songs themselves don't feel overly unique. In fact, they don't feel unique at all. I didn't get any semblance of Seventh Wonder's uniquity in this album, and in fact it really does sound like an album in the middle of a band's career who've run out of ideas. The first 6 songs are all just okay. We've got a bunch of long form prog songs between 6 and 8 minutes, all of them more or less the same, just riffs and instrumental passages. The ballad itself is nondescript, by the numbers, uninteresting to me. There is a possible exception to this banality in the song Move On Through. The bass solos there present an atmosphere not found anywhere else in this album and are actually quite good, though it's possibly a sign of doom if the best part of your album is the bass solo. Elephant in the Room is obviously a massive 30-minute title track that closes out the 67-minute album. So at the beginning, this one brings out all the bells and whistles with an orchestral arrangement, but really that's nothing special, and that's about all that's different about this song. The only thing that distinguishes it from the rest is the fact that it's obviously novel, because it's 30 minutes. There's nothing in here that you can't hear somewhere else, either in this album or in any other album within the genre. It's totally indulgent, and it's 30 minutes because they wanted it to be 30 minutes, not because it needs to be. This song is only 20 seconds shy of the entire Youth of America album. Now, which one do you think I'd rather be listening to? Forgive me for being so negative. I don't like doing it. And it is music at the end of the day. It's not unlistenable. But I can't be too generous with an album that I just genuinely didn't enjoy at all. Alright then. An album I love from the year this was released, 2010. Earlier than I thought, actually. I'm gonna go with something that I've actually only heard twice, but I've always loved every song I've heard from it whenever it comes on. It's gonna be Admiral Fell Promises by Sun Kill Moon. This is one of the last ones Kozilek did before he moved into that Benji sort of narration thing, and it's a purely acoustic album. Very enjoyable listen, if a bit longer than it needs to be, but I would definitely recommend it. And the name of the game is The Great Escape, a One and Done. Yes, that's it.